Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if the Panama Canal never existed. The Panama Canal is, as the name already indicates, a canal located in the country of Panama. It is not only a canal, but the canal. In 2020, 2.6 billion US dollar they were taken in as a toll, while the state budget of Panama is around 24 billion US dollar. Thus, almost 10% of the revenues here in Panama, they come from the canal. Panama is not the only state that relies on the canal. Many countries, especially the US, also rely on the Panama Canal. Manufacturers, exporters, transportation, etc. saves a lot of money due to the existence of this canal. The idea of a canal in Panama was nothing new. The Spanish colonizers, they were already toying with such an idea. Moreover, the construction of canals, it's also nothing that is really challenging. I mean, just let's take a look into the history. Egyptians, they were already building canals, the Romans as well, and then also France did the same. And France had a lot of noteworthy experiences, and this for centuries when it came down to the canal building. But the projects such as the Panama Canal proved to be too much for the French. The French, they tried to build the canal but failed to do so because they wanted to build the canal on the same sea level as the sea. Panama at the time was part of Gran Colombia, was facing a lot of challenges. There were civil wars between conservatives and liberals as well as voices that supported the independence of Panama. The US was very quick to jump on that opportunity and to get Panama independent so that they could negotiate the treaty with the newly independent state. On the 18th of November 1903, the US got the territory around the canal from Panama, and the construction was finished at the same year where World War I started. But what if all of that changed? What if the Panama Canal never existed? First of all, I want to mention that there won't be an alternative canal in this alternate history. Several alternatives they have been proposed, one alternative canal being in Nicaragua. The Chinese are very much behind it nowadays, for example. In this timeline, no canal will be built in the Americas. This may be an ASB, but let's just go back to the year 1881. The French failed to build the canal in Panama, and over $200 million were lost in this undertaking. $200 million in 1881 had a different value than it has nowadays. So let's just say that the US would see this as a huge waste of money, and so would other states. Not to mention the fact that the US would spend some of its budget in foreign policies, such as supporting the newly independent state of Panama, or even have their army intervene in the worst case scenario. Second of all, lobbyists. The train or railway lobbyists, they would have more power in this timeline. They would do everything they could in order to stop every attempt to construct the Panama Canal. Without the backing of a big state or upcoming superpower and some more failures here and there, the idea of the Panama Canal would be laughed at as, say, monorails for instance. Many people would still support it and see some logical sense in it, but it would just never happen. Third of all, what about Panama? Panama may not even be an independent state. In this scenario, the US would not support the construction of the Panama Canal, and thus they would not meddle in Colombian affairs. Well, at least not as much as they did in our timeline. Panama may still get some type of autonomy, and so would other parts of Colombia as well, but in this timeline Colombia would be a bit bigger, but still face many problems. The addition of Panama would not suddenly solve Colombian problems. Instead, Colombia's problems, they would just spread to Panama as well. The US would still have the banana wars going on, and thus, even without supporting Panama's independence, the US would still have a negative reputation in Latin America. What else does it imply for the US? Well, the US will be a railway or train nation. More railways they will be built, rail yards, more companies will appear, more transportation will be going on. This has the effect that the interior of the US will see a different growth than in OTL. It's entirely possible that we would see more dynamic cities or even regions evolve, while the coasts could be somewhat less busy. Train companies would bring a lot of work, jobs, opportunities, and many cities would unfortunately start to depend on these connections. Would the automobile industry even catch on? At this point, it's possible that it still would, but we could see more pressure of railway companies to build less roads, for instance, and this could go on until the Great Depression. Many companies would go bankrupt, many people would lose their jobs, and some cities they may even never recover from it. We could then see an earlier version of a rust belt in the interior of the country. Some cities and regions they could recover, while others they would just not recover. With the Great Depression, we could see a monopoly arising or even a cartel forming of railways or transportation companies. In this timeline, the train lobbyists would have a similar power as those working in the oil field or those working for the pharma industry or the military-industrial complex, simply because they would be needed and there was no alternative. You could not just go around them. The outcome of World War II might have been different, but not totally altered, because the US Navy or the US fleet wouldn't have been able to move quickly between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, for instance. One thing that could happen would be that those ships would have been constructed in a different way, so that the different parts they could be assembled very easily, or that the US would focus more on their air force. Either way, the US Navy would be totally altered. Global shipping would not be gone, but it would be less lucrative. There would be less profit to be made, and why go all the way around Americas if you can just use the train to deliver your goods? Public transportation may actually be a bit better within the US in this timeline, and there would be more access in less accessible regions. Antonov-like planes could be developed by the US, while Panama would face several issues, just like Colombia. Not only would there be folk rebels, right-wing rebels, but also people fighting for more autonomy or even independence. From a political point of view, a Panama Canal through Colombia's province of Panama would not make much sense in a never-ending conflict, while railroad transportation would boom even more than in OTL, and several places in the interior of the US would be more developed than in OTL, and finally the US Navy would be very different from OTL. And that's where we leave it for now. Ok, eso es una...
Esa es la esclusa de Gatún,
de Gatún, sí.
el área del Atlántico, la provincia de Colón. Y como ves, ya dentro porta contenedores. Ya la esclusa.
Es una gran barca, sí.
Correcto. Y al fondo es el otro barco que está en espera para entrar en la esclusa.
Ah, esa barca quiere entrar.
Ajá, pero tiene que esperar. Como tú ves, a los lados hay como especie unas lanchas. Esas lanchas las conectan con el barco y de ahí hacia acá viene un capitán panameño manejando el barco.
Ah, ok, porque ellos tienen la educación para hacerlo.
Correcto. Entonces, al venir hacia acá, cuando llegan a la esclusa, al inicio hay especies como si fueran unas locomotoras. es para llevar el barco que vaya de una manera que no se mueva para que no golpee las paredes del
Sí,
enclosure.
porque si no es correctamente pueden
Así es.
tener
Entonces
problemas.
la motora es que lo guía y lo va llevando.
Ok.
Lo va llevando. Y ya cuando sale de toda la esclusa, automáticamente viene, lo suelta y ya él va libre.
Porque también hay nivel diferente
Así
del
es.
agua.
El agua sube, después baja, sube y baja.
So what is said is that in there, this part is where the big container ships they are waiting to enter this part in here. And as you can see, there's like another ship trying now to get to the other side. And there are like different levels of water, right? So you cannot just go with your ship in here. First of all, you also need actually to have a Panamanian captain. So you cannot manage the whole ship on your own. And the ship has like to get attached to different machines so that everything is correct and that they can slowly but surely pass to the next level, right? Because all of this, what you see in here, this is like still connected with the sea. But over there you can see that there are like different levels, elevators, all of this. Because the first try, where the French tried to make everything on the same level as the sea, it failed. And so when the US came here, they did different levels. Because that was the only way how they could work with it. Otherwise they would have to explode even more soil and take out more soil, which would then fail, of course. Yeah, and also, as you can see, there are like different other ships, like still waiting to get taken. There's also like this huge bridge. It's really interesting, and we are here in the... ¿Cómo se llama? Esa parte, ¿cómo se llama?
Esta, aguas claras.
Aguas Claras. Yeah, we are here in the Aguas Claras en la provincia de Colón.
Correcto.
In the province of Colón.
Así es.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.